Hello, I'm Harley Schlanger. Welcome to our weekly webcast and dialogue with Helga Zepp-LaRouche. It's December 9th, 2020. Now, as most of you already know, there's tremendous chaos in the world. The US election has not yet been decided. There are legal cases, ongoing investigations, and worldwide there's a significant amount of chaos with threats of war, efforts to try to contain China coming from NATO and certain crazed circles of warmongers in the United States. So in the midst of this, the Schiller Institute is going to be holding a conference to present some solutions to the world, to address the cause of these crises and some solutions. And the conference is titled The World After the US Election, Creating a World Based on Reason. Helga, why don't you give us a little bit of a sense of what this conference is about and why people should go to the schillerinstitute.com and sign up to participate. It's an online conference this Saturday and Sunday. So Helga, go ahead.
Well, the other title or the concept of the conference is a notion coming from Nicolaus of Cusa. Now, many people don't know who he is, but he is actually the most important thinker in Europe in the 15th century. And he is generally regarded to be the father of modern science and also the father of the modern nation state. This will be discussed at the conference. But he has developed a method of thinking called the coincidence of opposites. And that is sort of the approach we want to take to all four panels, because I think, while you can discuss many of the problems of the world, ranging from the COVID crisis, the hunger crisis, all of these strategic crises, the main problem is that most people look at these things with a wrong method of thinking, in a nominalist way, in a positivist way, on the level of the sense certainty, what their feelings are. But I think to find a solution to these problems requires a different method of thinking, namely the coincidence of opposites, that the human mind, reason, is able to create a solution on a higher level than the level on which the problems developed. This was also Albert Einstein's view, who basically famously said, you can never find a solution to a problem on the same level where it developed. And the whole idea is that we have to find a way of, establishing a level of reason so that all the many problems which the world is faced with right now can actually be addressed and solved. Now, after having made that short preface, the first panel of this conference will be the strategic implication of the US election and everything which, is happening around it. Now, if you go by the Western mainstream media, and it does not really make a difference between the US media and the European media, you would think this election is settled. Trump is just making a lot of trouble by not accepting a foregone conclusion that Biden won. But we know that the situation is very much different. I mean, first of all, despite the fact that many of the court cases and suits were rejected, there is a new one which I think is quite significant, and that is that the state of Texas is suing the states of Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and I don't know, anyway, some of the swing states, that there were so many irregularities that they are demanding that these elections be repeated. Now, we don't know yet what the Supreme Court will do, but I mean, the reality is, and since we have been following this situation not in a passive way, but in a very active way, we had last weekend this commission, investigative commission to seek truth in the elections, they formed an opinion and they came to the conclusion that there were so many irregularities. There are thousands of people who made affidavits that they saw unbelievable amounts of manipulations. There is this famous video where you actually see how, basically ballot stuffing is going on. Then there are all these allegations that, the voting machines were rigged, and many states bought these machines so that the upcoming election could be rigged. All of these things are out there. And since everybody knows that, if there is not a fair election possible in the United States, you can really kiss democracy goodbye in the rest of the world. Because, if the most powerful country in the world can have such an incredible situation, what about all the small states around the world? So this will be the issue at the first panel. And many other issues will go into it. We will discuss the urgent need. There are these appeals to President Trump that he must use the time he still has, no matter what comes out of the election, to pardon Assange, whose life is in grave danger. He's sitting in a jail in Belmarsh in Great Britain, where there was a COVID outbreak. So he is already weakened, and he must immediately be brought to the United States, but with guarantees for his life by the president himself. Also, Snowden should be pardoned, and they have a lot to say about the background of Russiagate, the background of this coup. So this will all be discussed, and naturally also the role of the suit or the prosecution against my former husband, Lyndon LaRouche, because when he was gone after by the same apparatus like what we see now in motion against President Trump, he said, if this is not stopped, that nobody is safe. He was a presidential candidate, and they threw against him the entire apparatus of the military-industrial complex, or what people call the deep state, which is really the Anglo-American intelligence community, which is acting right now against Trump. So that is still a question which must be resolved, and it's simply a question of justice. And I think that there will be a lot of discussion in this first panel, which really bears on the future of the entire world, because the outcome of that will be, decisively a question of war and peace.
Well, and a very important aspect of that is that the very technologies, the cyber technologies, which are being investigated as possibly involved in rigging the election, are controlled by the same networks that ran Russiagate, that operated against President Trump in his effort to change from the post-Cold War order of the neocons and neoliberals into a different kind of relationship with Russia and China. And so in a sense, the first panel will then be followed directly by a second panel, which will take up the question of the implications of the vote fraud. Why was this done against Trump? Who is doing it? And what kind of world order are they trying to create? And how it is that we can create a new strategic architecture to escape the danger of World War III. I think this is a crucial aspect of the first panel and the second panel representing a kind of unity, don't you, Helga?
Yes, because the second panel will discuss the strategic crisis, which everybody should know is really severe. And while Trump clearly has made some things which have been very upsetting, like his blaming of China for the coronavirus, which is not supported by scientific facts at all. Nevertheless, and I know the Chinese by now are quite infuriated about all the accusations against them. So it may look like the relation between the United States and China has soured quite a bit. But, if you know the actual apparatus which is coming, which would be coming into the White House with Biden. I mean, these are all people who, or many people, have been already in the Obama administration and have a profile of the endless wars, the interventionist wars, the confrontation with Russia and China. So while the Trump situation may not look so good as it looked at the beginning of his administration in respect to China, I still think that the possibility that you would resolve this is much better with Trump. And everybody who is not ideologically completely prejudiced should really understand that the world is in such a terrible crisis. You have hunger, you have epidemic, you have a blowout of the financial system pending, that to solve all of these problems does require that the two largest economies of the world work together, the United States and China. And right now you have the entire move by NATO into the Indo-Pacific, trying to encircle China, encircle Russia. So there's the modernization of nuclear weapons going on. And all of that means that we are really in a very dangerous situation, which could go out of control at any moment. Then the whole motion by the central banks to eliminate the last remnants of sovereignty from governments by going for the so-called Great Reset, meaning they want to, create a post-corona crisis world by digitalizing all the currencies, by computerizing all payments, which basically would mean they really do what the bankers in Jackson Hole were discussing already more than a year ago, that they want to shift the power of control entirely to the central banks, even more than it has been up to now. Now, we have solutions against that, which were defined by my late husband, Lyndon LaRouche. We have to have a totally new credit system. And, we need to go back to a Glass-Steagall separation of the banks. We need a new Bretton Woods as it was intended by Franklin D. Roosevelt. And we need to have a new security architecture. So that will be all discussed by very important experts from different countries in the second panel. So in a certain sense, while the first panel discusses why is this election brawl in the United States so fierce, the second panel will give you the strategic background of why all of this is happening.
I'm speaking with Helga Zepp-LaRouche, the founder of the Schiller Institute, about a conference the Schiller Institute is sponsoring this weekend, the 12th and 13th of December. It's online. You can register for it. It's up on the screen right now. Go to schillerinstitute.com to do so. And as Helga's emphasizing, this conference will be offering solutions, not just throwing up our hands saying everything's chaotic. Now, the third panel is, I think, one of the more important for that, because we're seeing a continuation of problems that predate the coronavirus in terms of the collapse of healthcare systems, not just in the developing sector, but in the advanced sector, and also the spread of hunger in what used to be the colonial area of the world, so that the World Food Organization head is warning of 30 million, maybe 70 million people dying of hunger if steps are not taken right now. But Helga, there seem to be people of goodwill and good conscience who are stepping forward to address this, and some of them will be addressing the conference.
Yes, this is a very important initiative called the Committee of the Coincidence of Opposites. I mean, this was a proposal I launched already in June. The idea is that in order to find a solution to the problems you mentioned, you have to bring the different social groups together, like the farmers. It is an outrage that US farmers have, top crops, harvests, but they cannot deliver it to the places where the food is needed. the farmers go bankrupt because the cartels prevent them from getting the kind of price they need, and that has to be remedied. So there is right now a world famine. The head of the World Food Program, David Beasley, has just corrected his previous prognosis that there would be the danger of 30 million people dying. He said that if there is not a dramatic change, the danger is that in 2021 there will be 270 million people starving to death. And that is going on already in places like Yemen, Sudan, Northeast Nigeria, and many other places. People are already in immediate danger of starving by, the millions. I mean, that is not an exaggeration. Naturally, you won't hear that from the mass media because they're busy in putting out lies about Trump and the US election. But this is the worst humanitarian crisis since the end of World War II. And we want to bring together medical associations, doctors, nurses, medical research facilities, have partnerships with Africa, transport medical supply, but also food. Now, Philip Soko-Libane, who is a member of the Schiller Institute from South Africa, has issued an urgent appeal to President Trump that he must commit the US military to help, because the logistical problem is so big. There are many countries where you don't even have dirt roads in the villages, but people are starving, and you have to bring all of this aid to the most remote areas of the world. So that will be discussed. And as you say, there are some people who have come forward who want to be part of the solution to that. And we want to create an environment which, makes it clear this has to be done, because this is a test of morality of mankind. Can we act when it would be possible and actually quite easy to do? So that will be a very, very important panel right there.
And the fourth panel will take up what you raised at the very beginning of our discussion, the method of thinking which enables people to be manipulated. The fact that you have, besides the mass media, the social media, the education system, the role of the military-industrial complex, people have a hard time staying focused on much of anything. And this is an opportunity to bring up this whole question of culture. This is the Beethoven year, the 250th anniversary of his birth. And yeah, the 250th, right? And this is the theme of Think Like Beethoven is something that Lyndon LaRouche introduced years ago about how you can elevate the quality of thinking so you can take in all of these subjects and look for solutions from the standpoint that the universe is coherent and it's man's reason which can guide us. What do you think will be most important from this fourth panel?
Well, Lyndon LaRouche has always said that a society must learn to think like the great composers or the great poets, classical artistic composition. And that is, I think, very, very important, because, culture is not some luxury thing what you do, when you have a lot of leisure time, but it's a way of life. It's a way of how to identify the identity of your own life and how you look at humanity. So the celebration of Beethoven gives a perfect opportunity to, really develop this idea of classical composition, of organizing your thoughts, like a composer. You have an idea, you develop it, you exhaust it, and you arrive on a higher level and you conclude it. This is very much different than modern days talk shows where, one word gives the other and people have an endless stream of opinions. This is more the Socratic method of finding the truth by exhausting an argument. And naturally, beauty is very important in this world, which is so full of ugliness and distress and violence and all these things which we know in our environment, we have to go back to the most elevated periods of the past, the Greek classic, the Italian Renaissance, the German classical period, and other great periods of human history, and find in each society the most advanced ideas, and then have those communicate with each other in order to create a new Renaissance. I think this is eminently possible, and it's very important that especially the young people are involved in discussing this, because, you know, if the youth is elevated, the future of humanity is beautiful. If the youth is bogged down in suicides and dope addiction and violent video games and all of these things, nothing positive can come out of it. So we will try to, have young people also discuss the merits of Shakespeare, of music, especially Beethoven naturally, but also Schiller and other great ideas. So I think that this last panel is very important, because it will give you the kind of moral outlook, which only can come from truth, beauty, and the good. And that was always the basis for great periods in history, because, you have to know what the unity is of the good, the beautiful, and the truthful, because that is the key to all other areas.
And of course, being able to break out of the groupthink that's been posed by the media and social media is key to freeing yourself so you can be creative. And that's the basis of happiness. So that's this weekend. And it's extremely timely because it'll be taking place on Saturday and Sunday, just before Monday, when the Electoral College is supposed to meet. And of course, that's not definitive now what's going to come out of that. But for us to have clear-headed, creative capabilities unleashed by this conference will help us deal with whatever comes up starting on December 14th. So Helga, I just again, I'm appealing to all of our viewers to sign up and organize others to join the conference. You'll be able to participate. Helga will be there in most of the panels. I'll be participating. But it's important that you realize this is an opportunity for you to prepare yourself to function as a true citizen, both a patriot of your country and, as Schiller talked about, a citizen of the world. Helga, anything else you want to add?
No, I hope to hear from you on the weekend.
Okay, so we'll see you this weekend, and then we'll be back again next week with our regular weekly dialogue.